I'm Richard Greenstone, and you are in Young Lawyer Law Student Orientation, Your Questions Answered. This panel will answer all of your questions. We have nothing of substance to give you until you ask us a question. That's the format. We devised this class about 15 or 16 years ago when students came and young lawyers came to this conference, and they were at a loss on certain types of legal problems like work made for hire or pay or play or a contract issue or a trademark issue. And so we decided we would have a question and answer session where you can ask anything you want. Don't play Stump the Band, though, it's something so obscure. But what happened was that we found that most questions were really directed towards employment, and I'm sure that that might be the case today given our current economic situation. And given our current economic situation, you have limited options given that you're now almost an attorney or already have passed the bar. You could go for an LLM or a PhD in this subject, but fewer and fewer do. I would like to introduce our panelists. They'll tell you a little bit about their practice. They'll turn it back over to me, and then we'll take our first question and go from there. To my immediate left is Joyce Dollinger. Welcome, Joyce. And why don't you give us a little information about yourself?
Well, first, thanks to Richard for inviting me on this panel and all the panelists. I'm very excited to be here. I actually used to be sitting where you guys were sitting many years ago, sitting there asking the same questions and listening. So, as Richard said, my name is Joyce Dollinger. I work and live in New York City, of counsel with a law firm called Dollinger, Gonski, and Grossman. And I'm an entertainment lawyer, but I concentrate mostly on music and copyright issues. I also do a lot of business organization dealings, as well as some film and TV projects, a lot of rights and clearances, which are basically let's say, having a piece of music in a film. I do a lot of that. And I love working with small businesses and artists and bands and music producers. And I try to protect them and also help them get their creativity out from their art. And I love what I do, and I'm excited about answering some of your questions.
Thank you, Joyce. Travis Life.
My name is Travis Life. I am a solo practitioner in Chicago, Illinois. I do entertainment law. Majority of my business is in music, as well as some theater and literature. I've been doing this for a little while, and I was fortunate enough to become the Young Lawyers Division Liaison to this forum. So I would like to encourage you, after your questions, to take full advantage of this forum and introduce yourself to, other members and other attendees. And hopefully I can answer some questions today.
Great, Travis. Thank you. Owen Seitel.
Thanks, Richard. Hi, everyone. Thanks for getting up this early. My name's Owen Seitel. I'm a founding partner of the San Francisco-based law firm of Idell and Seitel. We focus, we do both transactions and litigation, and our focus is in intellectual property as it primarily deals with the entertainment, sports, and new media industries. I've been practicing for 20 years now. I think it's close to 20 years now, which is kind of scary because I do remember when I was sitting where you guys are sitting now. So I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Owen. Vered Yacovi.
Good morning, I'm Vered, and I practice only in insurance coverage and risk management in the sports industry. So if you have entertainment questions, they'll go that way. I'm also the editor-in-chief of the forum's publication, Entertainment and Sports Lawyer, and teach sports law as an adjunct at USC. And I will wait for your questions to elaborate.
Great, thank you, Vered. And I'm Richard Greenstone. I practice in San Francisco. In fact, I'm in the same suite as Owen. The majority of my practice is entertainment law with an emphasis on the intellectual property issues like copyrights and trademarks. I also do a lot of some television clearance work and a little bit of music, a good amount of new media, or what may be called new media, which is now just media, and some arts law. Well, now it's your turn to tell us about what's bugging you, what questions you may have, and in order to prevent the awkward silence that always ensues a first question, I've asked Phil Hill here in the front row, who is going to ask our first question. Phil, the floor is yours.
I was just wondering how all of you broke into the entertainment industry as attorneys, and also how you could recommend for us here to do the same.
Thank you. Who would like to start? Owen? You
Sure,
have a
I'll
big smile.
start. You know, it's been my experience that most attorneys that are in this field really have wanted to do it from a pretty early stage, and we're very focused and driven in that regard. I'm not one of them. I really kind of fell into it in a way.
What are you doing here, though?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've always loved music. I've always loved sports and so on. And but I came out of law school and I just needed a job. I needed to get a paying job, and I took the first relatively decent paying job that came my way. But I did later in my career, about 5 years in, I was presented with an opportunity where I was playing on a baseball team, on a recreational baseball team, and one of my teammates was offered a record contract, and literally we were in the dugout. It was like the second inning of some boring game, and he turned to me and he asked me if I would do his record deal. And I was honest. I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll try to figure it out, and I'll do it for you. So I did that, and within a year, I had done about 6 or 7 more, because that's it's a pretty tight-knit little community of musicians, and that's really how kind of I fell into it. And it's just one of those things where an opportunity comes along, and you need to recognize it and jump on it. So that's my story.
This is a great example that baseball has been very, very good to you. Travis?
Well, I've always been excited about entertainment law in particular. I kind of had to find my own niche to make my way into this industry. Tried a lot of different angles, going through different organizations and different companies, and I finally found what worked for me is to go out on my own and develop my own practice. And I've been fortunate enough, thankfully, that I've been able to have a very good group of colleagues that will help me whenever I need assistance, and fantastic clients and artists to help me learn and kind of grow with the industry as it grows. That was kind of my travel into the entertainment world, and for me personally, that's what's worked best.
Joyce?
Well, my road is sort of long and windy and is not really from A to B to C. I was born with this bug of, sometimes I'm calling it a virus now, but this music bug when I was very young, and I never let go of it, and that's part of why I'm doing music law today. And it was something that I was passionate about and had a drive, and throughout my life I always found opportunities to do something in music or television, and I had 1,000,001 internships. I could probably write a book about how to be the best intern ever and find it. And it starts with just opening the yellow pages and making some calls. But I started that way, and in going from internship to internship, I pretty much found the road of how to do what I wanted to do, and one of those avenues was law school, and learning the business, and that's so I broke in. Basically, my first internship was at Rolling Stone magazine, and I was like a kid in a candy store. Like, I couldn't believe I was there, and this was like before computers, and they had like this one big computer, and I just from there started working at various labels, but because I can't sit still and just do this one job, I would do a lot of extracurricular activities, and that would be finding bands that I like to work with, and I started to do some management on the side. I worked for a comedy agency, and I would make sure I went to see all the comics and talk to them, although when you really talk to them, they're not all that funny. They're funny on stage, but that's how I sort of broke in. But I don't want to say, like, you're here now, and if you've never done an internship, don't freak out. I would say that, as on this panel, everyone has different experiences, and there's always an opportunity, no matter where you are, New York or in Kansas or in anywhere, that there's always something you can find to do, and there's always a community of people to talk about. So, but the other thing I do want to say is that if you have this drive and passion, there's not always just going to be the job of the lifetime. You have to look for like windows and doors, back doors, keyholes. However if you're really wanting to do this, you have to just try to get in any way possible. And it might not be through the front door or on a silver platter. So, and as like Travis just said, sometimes if you can't find, well, not what he just said, but sometimes you have to make it for yourself and open up your own practice as well, so to do what you want to do.
Vered?
Well, sorry, Owen, but it drives me bonkers when I hear people say they fell into it. Because that's the opposite of what I did. I did a lot of volunteering to get experience in sports, and I did a lot of volunteering specifically with respect to insurance in sports, and that's how I kind of grew my niche. And I was fortunate that it is a niche and no one else is doing it, and so I have expertise that kind of led me into the industry I was trying to work in. Couple things that people said. Joyce, I agree with you. There really isn't a set path, and somebody that I look up to, I heard, said, plan your life in pencil. And I think that's the perfect way to look at trying to break into sports or entertainment, because it probably, when it does work out for you, it's not going to be how you expected it would work out. So I think that just, keep trying any avenue that's open to you and be flexible.
Thank you. I think that sheer persistence is one of the things that you'll find from each of our panelists. From me, I graduated in 1981, and I really, really wanted to do copyright law because of my background in art and photography, and just couldn't get a job. And so I made my own job, and it seems like an incredibly brave or stupid thing to do now, but it's worked out in the end. So, do we have another question? Now we have the awkward silence. Yes, sir, come on up to the microphone.
While we're on the topic, I'd love to just ask all of you, with these sort of volunteer opportunities and alternative paths into this career, when you find an opportunity per se that's removed from what you'd rather be doing, for me it's music I'd like to be doing, it looks like I'm going to be coming in a different way, at least at this time the opportunities are in other places. Have you found that there is flexibility to transfer as you've made your way, or has it been just following whatever opportunity comes up at that point in your life?
Yeah.
Well, of course, there's always different answers to that question, but I would say that if there's an area that you really love and you're not in that area at the moment, I would take every opportunity to learn as much about the area that you want. So like if it is music, I would go to like a Borders every week on Saturday and get the Billboard magazine, which is a trade magazine, and I would read it cover to cover and learn about the business that you're in and see the names that are out there and do some research on them and maybe use a network and contact them. But the more you know about your business, there's always an opportunity. You never know. You might be in an elevator with Jay-Z, and you could be like, I just read in Billboard that, you just did this $1 million crazy deal with Live Nation or something. And you never know when that opportunity is going to come. So if you know a lot about the facts of your business and who's in the business, that will help you, as well as going to as many networking events in your area that you want to be in as possible. And even if you're in a place that's not, let's say you like music, that's not maybe a music city, there's always a club, a place that music is played at, and I would go there and maybe find who the booker is and just see and make your own networking event if you can't. But I feel that that's how you sort of transition, because if you know a little bit about your business, then you can get into it. But you know, and I think it's going to be different if you're in music and you want to get into sports. That's a little bit difficult, but nothing's difficult. Everything is, you could do whatever, try whatever you want. But I would just say as much knowledge as possible, and then there always could be an opportunity. And the other thing I want to say is there's Volunteers Lawyers for the Arts, which it's not in every city, but you can look it up and go to some of those events and see if you can work in, like, say there's a client that is in music, then you could do that, you know, work out of there, and that's how you transition, and then you can use that in your meetings.
Vered.
I just want to give another perspective to that, because I've had an experience where my whole career, I really focused it towards sports, and my whole career is in sports, but of late, I've fallen into a little bit of music by virtue of the fact that music needs insurance too. And so some, you know, bands, recording studios, they have general liability policies. They have to fight with their insurer. If you're going on tour, you have issues of bodily injury. Who knows what's going to happen? So you want to have a good risk management plan in the music industry as well as in the sports industry. So my skills kind of cross, you know, all the industries. And I think that that's a good thing to remember. No matter what area you're trying to get into, it's not always so cut and dry that, oh, you have to learn X area of law in order to break in, and then you can only be this kind of lawyer, because if you look at any of our industries, all areas of law apply to them, so you can really be creative with what you learn. I mean, insurance coverage, I never wanted to grow up and be an insurance lawyer. You just fell into it because it's part of the sports industry, just like it's part of other industries. So you can take your skill, really, and apply it to music like you asked, and, you know, if an opportunity comes up in a different industry, those same skills will be applicable. But I agree with Joyce that it's good if you are really interested in one of the areas to get to know the industry, what's happening. So for example, I look at the Sports Business Daily every day. It comes to me via email, and even if I don't have time to read it, I glance at the headlines, and that's really all I need to do to be able to not be caught off guard if I'm talking to someone in the industry and they mention some huge event. I know kind of what's going on all the time. So there are lots of things like that for each industry that you can do that aren't really time-consuming or expensive, and you can keep abreast of the things that are happening.
On the CD-ROM that you received out at the registration table is there's a portion of that devoted to this class, and there's a reading list that's now well over 15 pages long with books, trade journals, websites, articles, you name it, and check it out. It's a great resource. We've been compiling it for years. And so take a look at it. You'll find something that interests you in the industry. And I think that one of the things you should be considering is if you want to get into the music industry, if you want to get into the television industry, you learn about that industry, not just the law of that industry, but you have to know the business basics, which are just extraordinarily important. Maybe Travis or Owen could expand on this issue of business basics.
Well, I think kind of to follow up on your question, I think that you really have to be flexible. I mean, I think that's the overall answer that you need to know. With the kind of the job area being the way that it is, go wherever your path is kind of leading you, develop a skill set, but remain focused on what you want to do. I mean, if you want to do music law, you know, get away from that, get away from what you're doing from time to time, just as Joyce had said, and go to a music venue, talk to music attorneys, go to your bar association, and you know, talk to those attorneys, get involved in that as many, you know, through different opportunities that you can. The Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts is a fantastic way to get involved with it, and I highly, highly recommend it if you get an opportunity to do that. You know, and with that, I think you do have to build up your skill set of what you need to do or what you want to do, and through reading the trades, through being involved in different areas, and kind of grow together, if you can, with the path that you're on currently, and developing the career set that you want. And, you know, it'll take you where you need to go.
Great.
Yeah.
Owen?
Well, all I can do is kind of amplify what's been stated already. I would suspect that most of you in this room, coming out of law school, perhaps your first and maybe even your second job thereafter is not going to be sports and entertainment related, and you shouldn't be discouraged by that. I think that is perhaps the norm. But you should be encouraged by the fact that whatever skill set you garner through those jobs and the experience that you attain will be applicable to sports, entertainment, anything else you want to get into. That's certainly been my experience. So if, for example, with me, I started out at just a general litigation firm doing all kinds of, breach of contract, just all kinds of litigation. And to this day, that experience and that background is helpful even when I'm doing transactional work, because obviously it's good to see what happens when things go really bad when you're negotiating a deal and drafting a contract. So I wouldn't, I would not be discouraged at all if your first job out of law school is not in sports and entertainment. I think that if you want to maintain the focus to be in this area, obviously you do need to keep up on the trades. You need to keep up on what's going on in the particular field you want to get into. But the skill set that you're going to attain through your job in another field is going to be applicable in this arena also.
Joyce?
I just wanted to add to something that Owen just said, and with the transition, a lot of people also I know had started in a different area, but they really like sports and entertainment, and there's the different areas, let's say like labor law and because there's always employment contracts, and labor law is really big for sports. So even if you're going to a labor law practice, you could then transition those skills into something entertainment. And then another thing I want to stress is corporations, knowing like marketing, how to make an LLC, the difference with an LLC, a DBA, because those are like the first questions I always get. Like, should I start a business, and how do I do that? And even if you do corporate law, that is a really good starting place as well, because then that's a transition you can make. But I just wanted to amplify the different practices, because entertainment law is filled with all different types of practice areas. Even trust and estates, because once you build your intellectual property, you're going to need to know how to do that, give it back to your family, and it might be in your will or make a trust. And so those things are important too. So all the areas you're learning in law school or that you're practicing now will affect your client in the future.
Great. Another question? Please, come on up.
Hi, good morning. Thank you all for being here and sharing your knowledge with all of us. So I just wanted to say that. And I wanted to know, how do you feel about when students are coming from different schools and trying to get to a place where they're in a major city? It's been really difficult for me. I'm coming from Boston. I'm coming from a major city, but my goal is to go to New York and to pursue entertainment law in New York. And so a lot of times I've been coming up against walls where people are like, well, all your experiences in Boston. For example, I did work for Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts, but I did it in Boston. And so I've been coming up against a bit of a wall there. And so I wanted to know, do you have any recommendations for people who are coming from other states, or they may not be in a big city, but they have aspirations to go to San Francisco or New York or Los Angeles or places like that? So,
Thank you. Great. Well, Joyce, you're in New York. Why don't you start this one off?
I'm talking too much. Okay. Well, I have some stuff to say about that. I think there's a couple of paths, is what we're saying. But one of the things, if you do want to come to New York, and New York especially has so many things going on, especially like California. There's always another event. There's music conferences all the time. There's one coming up next week. But what's really interesting is that you're here, and this is the American Bar Association, which is national lawyers, and you're going to meet, even if you're from a different state, you're going to meet people from New York. And I would say, on the list that you have in the materials, you'll see a lot of people listed that are from New York, and because we're part of the same organization, I would network with those lawyers or law students from the schools and start chatting with them about it. And then I would try to make visits to the city you want to go. So if you want to go to New York, at some point, I would make visits there. I would, as Travis was saying, the bar associations, the New York Bar Association I'm a member of, and it's not just in New York City, it's all over the state, and there's so many events, and I would look at their website and see when a nice event is coming up and maybe make a trip. And then you get to meet all these New York lawyers, and then, when you make contacts, keep contact with your contacts, and just to talk to them about different scenarios and what you're interested in, and do informational interviews, but make the trip there, because if you want to go to a place and you don't visit, then it's hard to transition there.
I think the local bar associations are a great place to network. For me, it was right here in LA when I first started practicing at the Los Angeles County Bar Association, and they had an entertainment luncheon, and I remember walking in and meeting the assistant editor to Entertainment and Sports Lawyer, which Vered now is the editor, and I introduced myself, I started writing 1 article, 2 articles, and then that got me into the Copyright Society of the USA to speak at their meeting on colorization, and I eventually became editor. I've met tons of people. It's just a great networking through this organization, I think, is especially good because it's a national organization.
I did something very similar. After law school, I left Chicago and came to LA. And it's hard. I mean, it's really hard. For me personally, it worked out better for me to go back to Chicago, so I'm not the best example to go by, obviously. And I'll tell you the reason why I went is my mentor, my entertainment professor, told me, he said, if this is the kind of business that you want to do, go to New York or LA and just dig in for 3 to 5 years, make all the contacts that you can make. And by that point, you'll have enough knowledge, skill set, that you can practice just about anywhere. And I think at the time, he was right. I don't think it's necessarily, I don't think I would give the same advice today. But what I will recommend is, as been said before, go to the organizations in New York. But another thing is utilize your contacts in Boston, because they know people in New York. And they are going to lead you to people to meet in New York. And that was one of the most helpful things that I had received was the person who gave me advice gave me a list of people. And the first thing I did before I packed up the car and left was I sent out emails, phone calls, everything else, started arranging luncheons, see if I would meet them at different workshops, make sure that you get your face in front of them, and keep them informed of what you're doing and how you want to keep interested and involved with it. I think it's hard, but it's not impossible, so you can definitely do that.
I think the question goes to, and I think it points out that there are different paths of entry. If you want to be in New York, just go to New York, if that's what you want to do. But if you want to be in sports and entertainment, there are certainly plenty of secondary markets around the country where you're not swimming in as big of an ocean as you will be in either New York or LA, and to some extent Nashville for that music scene. So it may be a wise decision to play in some of those smaller markets where it's not going to be as competitive, where you can make a name for yourself and make the jump to New York or LA at a later point in your career if you desire. It may be that you're the one in that town. So there are many ways to do it, and certainly the tried and true way is to go to New York or go to LA and just try to make your name. But look around, there are opportunities. I think back, if I were a music lawyer in the early 90s in Seattle, there was a lot of stuff going on there. So there are opportunities out there, you just got to be open to it, and they're not all in New York and LA.
Vered?
Can I add to that too? Yeah. You're already doing the first thing, which everyone mentioned, and that's go to national conferences where you'll meet lots of people. But while you're here, you have to be active, not just passive. And a good thing to do is look in the attendee list. Everyone got one. And look for people that are based out in New York and seek them out and try to talk to them. And even if there's no time, ask them for a card and say, would you mind if I call you? Could we set up a 15-minute call? And then, next time you're in New York, maybe you can sit down for coffee with them then. So be active and try to seek those people out. 2 more quick points on this. The second one is that I think smaller markets are overlooked, and I can't really speak to entertainment except for Ken Abdo's firm, which is an anomaly. It's this big music and entertainment firm where in Minnesota?
Minneapolis. Yeah.
So, but other than entertainment, but I can speak to sports. I mean, there's so many cities that, I mean, there are some big sports opportunities. Like, I think Atlanta is a really good example. Coke is there, Comcast is there, the Atlanta Spirit, I don't know how many companies that is, the Hawks and some others. And there are tons of sports lawyers in Atlanta. Who knew? So, you know, don't overlook the smaller markets. There are a lot of sports jobs if you get outside of the obvious, you know, teams and leagues. There's sponsors, there's broadcasters. There are a lot more opportunities than what you might glean at face value. So there's that. And then the third point I wanted to make is that in any city, you know, you can either try to find people while you're there visiting, or you can say, oh, I'm going to be there. Do you have time to meet me? And if the person does, then you can meet them. You know, I did that once. I was in town for a football game one time, and obviously it was on a Sunday. And I said to the general counsel of this team that I was dying to meet, oh, I'm going to be there through Monday. Do you have time? And he said, yeah. So guess who changed their ticket? And I stayed through Monday, and I got to meet him. So, you know, I think you have to be active, and I think it's really easy to do if you are active.
Thank you. Another question? Please.
Hi, I'm glad to hear that there are other people who are who started off in other areas. I've actually been out of law school a few years myself. And my background is actually in family law right now. And my question, I actually have two questions. The first one is, do you find when you first came out and you started doing this, did you find that you had to continue practicing in another area if you had already been practicing in a previous area before doing this, before you kind of fully became a sports and entertainment lawyer? And then my second question is, having the background in family law, I'm well versed in dealing with difficult clients. Do you all have that experience as well, and how do you deal with it?
Who has difficult clients here? Terribly difficult clients. Vered?
Well, wow, that's a tricky question. I think, actually, no, I've been lucky. I don't think I have particularly difficult clients, but I work more on the management side. So, boy, how do I answer that? I think there are difficult clients in any industry. But I wanted to say one thing about family law. I mean, that's a perfect example, just like insurance law. I mean, talk about how that's transferable to sports and entertainment. I mean, especially, every day I open a magazine and reading about someone getting divorced or suing for custody or something, and those are family law lawyers handling those matters for entertainers. So I definitely think that that's a transferable area of law, and so maybe you could learn a different area as well, but I don't think that's necessarily not going to help you.
You know, making the transition is kind of a balancing act. Obviously, you want your income to keep coming in, but you're experimenting with these new areas of law, and it's just a function of time and your energy and just putting it into it, and just keep pushing on it, and it eventually happens. I think one of the great paths into entertainment and sports law is to start writing for example, Entertainment and Sports Lawyer. It helped me immensely, it then people start calling you about the subject that you wrote. Every time I write an article, I get calls. Sometimes they're insulting and they say, "What did you write that for?" And other times they say, "Great job. Can you help me on this matter or give me a couple of thoughts with regards to this particular case?" And I think it's a great way to go. But the flip side, in a sense, of your question is you're just getting out of law school. You want to get into entertainment and sports. And you just, what happens is you want to do this area really bad, but something else comes up. Uncle Charlie says, do my bankruptcy. And you go, well, okay. And you do the bankruptcy, but then you get 10 more bankruptcies because Uncle Charlie loves you and he's sending all his other friends to you. And this is a difficult point in your career where, in a sense, that other area is taking over before you even get your chance. And sometimes you just say, I'm not a bankruptcy lawyer, and I'll just, I'm going to keep pushing towards my ultimate goal.
Can
Yes.
I have two things I wanted to say. Was that I don't know what exactly you do in family law, but one of the big things that I've also been dealing with is minor issues. So, like, if you deal in family law, you might deal with children and custody, and knowing how to do a contract with a minor and what the things that you have to do with it to make it, legal, is really important. And especially, like, I don't know what area you want to be in, but let's say music. The record labels are always looking for those little babies out there. So knowing how to handle, and also in acting, there's a lot of child actors out there, and knowing how to deal with minors. So I would say for family law, and also with the difficult clients and being in family law, there's a good transition for mediation, and maybe going and taking a mediation class and learning about that, and how to do it. And because then there's, in my practice, I know instead of doing litigation, sometimes we've been putting in contracts that will maybe find a mediator, not arbitration yet, but just try to have a third party that could help us out. So if you're good with dealing with that, that's another area. And then you could say, I know how to do mediation, and even if you haven't done something in entertainment, it's still the same skill set.
Yeah, I think everything that you're doing right now is entirely transferable, and the experience is useful. I'm assuming in family law you're dealing with people that are extremely emotional, at times somewhat irrational. So I would say to you, you should talk to the lead singer in every band. So yeah, that's quite useful. And then in terms of the transition, it's not realistic to think that you're going to decide one day, all right, I'm going to hang out a new shingle and it's I'm an entertainment lawyer today, and you're not going to do any of the other work that you did, last week. So the economic realities, will dictate what you can and can't do. And all you can do is just try to make a thoughtful transition in that regard while still paying your rent.
There are a zillion niches in entertainment and sports law, and there's a niche that everyone can fill, and you can find it. It does happen, and pretty soon you'll be the person who does this one particular area of entertainment, and really, that's great because not everyone is going to do, for example, represent the top star. You just don't see that. Less than 1%.
Yeah.
Or the top athlete. That's a real. You may get there, and that's great, but that's not the only part of entertainment law when we think of it, or sports law. There's a huge pyramid below, in a sense, that representing the top talent.
And I think it's important to know that there's, the quote-unquote entertainment lawyer. I mean, what is that? I mean, that's like a litigator, a contract negotiator, an IP person, a family law person. I mean, it's across the board. It's not really. It's your clients that make you an entertainment lawyer. It's not the type of law that you practice.
That's right.
So you take your skill set and you integrate that with the type of work that you want to do, and then you're there.
Another question? Please.
Hi, my question is regarding LLMs. I just wanted to know how valuable you feel that they are, and whether you would recommend getting an LLM maybe with an entertainment focus. I know NYU offers a general studies program where you could kind of make your own program. The reason I ask is because my university, while they offer many classes that lend themselves to the entertainment industry, there's only very few that are exactly dealing with entertainment and sports law.
Okay. Anyone can answer that?
Well, I don't really have a lot to say on it because when I was getting out, there wasn't a lot of these LLMs. There was LLMs for tax and estate planning, but I don't know an answer to that except that if your school doesn't maybe have these classes, then I don't know if you're at a bigger school, like the undergrad might have some entertainment type classes, and you can see about getting approval to take something like that, like a music business class. But I don't think it can hurt, but in the end, you have to just get out there and start working and doing it. And it doesn't really matter how many degrees you have. I think, some of the big, I don't know the line to the biggest law firms, like the White and Case. And I mean, they're looking for, as you probably all know, like the top students, top schools, all of that. So that where it would be helpful. But just if you want to just start getting out there, you just have to do it. So, but I don't think it can hurt, but I don't know the benefit at the moment.
I think some schools are offering a certificate program, which is not an LLM. It's just part of your regular JD studies. But the same thing, when I was in law school, there was nothing like that offered beyond tax.
Yeah. I've never heard of an LLM for entertainment. That's kind of a new one to me.
I think there is for intellectual property or
Right.
copyright, there is some
That I'm
things.
aware, but I totally agree. I think the practical experience is the best experience you can get. I never discourage anybody from taking an LLM program. I think if that's something that you're interested in, then go for it. But I think the practical experience is the best experience you
Right.
can get.
Vera, do they have one in sports?
I don't know of any LLM programs in sports, but I know of at least 2 schools where you can get a certificate. It's too late to tell you where to go to law school, but
It's too late. Yeah.
I know, Marquette, you can get a certificate in sports law. I think you still can at Tulane. So I know there's some schools where they offer more than just one sort of sports law class. Like at Marquette, they have a separate professional one, an amateur one, and you can get more in depth, things like that. And what everyone said, I completely agree with. If you can't get the LLM in specifically what you want to get it in, or if you feel like you're not really sure if it's the right thing, see if you can extern for credit and, get some practical experience that way, because that would be a really great way to complement your, education with some entertainment experience.
Great. Let's talk about externships and internships for a minute. I'm not so sure that there's a huge difference on there, but have any of you done the externship or did that during law school route?
I did it during undergrad, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I always knew I wanted to work in sports, but I initially thought I wanted, to do another thing in sports. So I interned with the ABC affiliate in San Diego and did a little, sort of sports editing and writing and stuff like that. So I definitely, that was a wonderful learning experience. And it also helps you figure out if that's what you really want to do. So I definitely always encourage people to intern, extern, volunteer. I have some fabulous student editors on the Journal who hopefully are getting a lot out of their experience.
Good plug.
But there are a lot of ways to volunteer, and I definitely encourage it. I love doing it.
Great.
And just on that point, kind of from the employer's perspective, an externship or an internship is an opportunity for a potential employer to really check you out and get beyond just your academic accomplishments, which quite sometimes just don't jibe with what your real world capabilities are. So I know that at our firm we always have an intern there, and it's it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And we've hired over the past 10 years or so, we've hired several of them to become associates at our firm. One of whom is in this room somewhere.
They're going to remain incognito.
Yeah,
I guess.
she doesn't want to be pointed out.
I did an externship in law school, and it was, probably the best thing I did in law school, oddly enough. I enjoyed it so much, and it was such a valuable experience, and it really, really drove my passion to get into this kind of field and pushed me to doing it, and I highly, highly recommend doing that.
Well, I worked at the Legal Services Corporation doing poverty law, and maybe that's why I have such empathy for starving artists. I see another question. Come on up.
I just wanted to ask your advice on how best to obtain internships. I don't know how it works here, but I'm from London, and I'm sure I think it's a bit more of a formal process here. But in London, we do like speculative applications, and it's extremely competitive. Joyce, I think I know you interned at the ABC and NBC and for Rolling Stones. I just want to know how you stood out from the crowd, or any of you, and what advice you'd have for someone that has good experience and that is trying to apply and get in an extremely competitive market where there's not that many placements available.
I actually could talk about this all day, but we don't have all that time. There's a balance between interning, and I know a lot of people are like, if I intern, then I'm not getting any money from it, I need a job. But interning, I feel, it is so important. That's how I'm where I am right now, is that. When I was doing music management, I actually had an intern from London, and she came from London and she interned with us, and it wasn't like this crazy formal process, but we had to do things for immigration purposes. And she got firsthand experience how to work with artists and do it. So I think also in this day and age, there's the computers, like the Web 2.0. I mean, there's so many opportunities to find that you don't have to maybe do a very formal thing. You can find, and there's so many entertainment companies in the UK, and maybe trying to just work that way, like more of an informal process, and see if they need somebody to help you. And I would say it might not be at a law firm, it might be just at a company and in an area that you want to do, and that's learning the business, which I think is really important, and just getting your feet wet. I do want to say sometimes when you're interning, that there's some interns that don't take it seriously. They think it's entertainment and they just are there to like meet the famous people, and that's not really what it's about. It's about trying, whoever you're working for is like being proactive and being, what can I do? And if you don't even see it, if you're not just sitting and reading the paper, like get something to do, try to figure it out. It's a lot of, as Vered was saying, active. You have to be active. You have to show the people, even if it's an intern and not a particular job, that like this, you're hungry, you'll do whatever it takes. And there could be internships, as I was saying, that are non-legal, that because people need help all the time. Of course, don't be taken advantage of by the employers or where you intern either, because that could happen with like the coffee situation. But, but just be active. So I would say, and how I did it is I was going to these events and I would meet and I would say, and a lot of them were also entertainment events, and I would ask them, do you need someone to help in your office? I could file, or it was whatever it is, because I knew once I got there, I would do the best I can. I looked at it as that, I was doing this as an education value, and that if I want to get somewhere, I must try to show that I could do something for this person. And it helped a long way, and all these places I've interned at have helped me get to the next place. And the other thing I would want to say about internships is there's all these events, like there's a music event that I help with, and I put panels, legal panels together, so I get to call lawyers and try to get them to come, and that's also how you meet people. And then once you do these like CLE programs or volunteer events, then you can maybe ask them if they're looking for, an intern, or if they don't have any availability, would you know somebody that I could work with? It doesn't have to be like, I have to get credit, I have to, there's always, and there's so many people want interns, but they want also good interns that could help them.
You might want to read the book or see the movie The Devil Wears Prada for the obvious dysfunctional type of first job or internship type of thing where the person is, run around, but in a very fashionable way. Any other comments on that?
Good morning. My name is Michael Reitman. My question, I guess, is externship specific. When we're looking for an externship, how important is it to look for an externship that has, I guess, probability of you being hired as an associate? And do you recommend asking at an interview, if you get an interview, can I advance in this law firm, et cetera, stuff like that? Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I would suggest you be as straightforward as possible, and that's appreciated, to let your desires be known. So, the short answer is yes. You should say, this is kind of my goal, my career path. I want to come in here. I want to work hard. I want to make your life easier, and I want to, if I do that, if I do a good job here, is there a chance for me to, have a paying job thereafter? You should definitely ask that.
I think that's a very fair question. I think that's exactly what you said. I think that's a fair question, and I think they'd appreciate you asking. If they're looking for someone who who is in for the long haul and not in just for the internship, I think it shows that extra bit of interest in their organization. So yeah, I think that's a very good question.
I just want to add one thing about not being taken advantage of in an internship or externship situation. I mean, I think that's a really good point. So obviously things like, don't work for free for too long, like, a year, or I don't know where the point below that is where it becomes too long, but.
It's when your parents start complaining.
But there's a point where, you have to stop working for free. But on the other hand, don't let your feathers get ruffled too easily. And I know one very successful woman sports lawyer who decades ago was just starting out, and she was there for a contract negotiation on behalf of a pretty famous athlete, and the gentleman across from her didn't realize she was a lawyer and asked her to get coffee. So she went and got him coffee and gave it to him and sat down and started negotiating. And let me tell you, that gave her quite an advantage. So, just think about how to handle things. I mean, don't let yourself get taken advantage of, but not every situation where somebody's trying to take advantage of you is going to hurt you in the end if you just stop and think.
Can I mention something?
Yeah, sure.
You have to have a backbone in this business because, some people aren't very nice. A lot of people are nice, like everyone at this panel. And, but some people are not. And as long as, it took me a long time to, I don't even know if I have still a backbone, but it takes a lot of practice and patience to be strong and stick up for yourself, but as well as do the job. I want to just answer the externship thing. I agree with everyone on this panel, what they say. I also want to add, though, if you get the externship, you have, work hard when you're there, because if you work hard, then they're gonna probably want to hire you. But if they don't know what you're capable of yet, and they see that you just want to get a job after school, sometimes some employers might not like that at the moment. They want to see what you can do. And then I would also suggest, when you're in your externship, and if you take one and you're working, then, have a meeting with the person that had hired you and say, how am I doing? Is there something else I could be doing? And I love this place. I would love to be here after the externship, and sort of get a little mini review and see and do it that way. But that was just my other suggestion.
Thanks. Your greatest asset is your personality, and you just get out there and kind of bubble up and fizz, and and show people how enthusiastic you are, and that's your greatest asset. Do we have another question? We still have some time left.
I just want to add, if you do a really good job at your externship and don't get a job out of it, not to get discouraged, because not only do they have to like you and want to hire you, but there has to be a job for you. So timing is a big part of it. So you can't get discouraged if something doesn't happen for you right away. It doesn't necessarily mean you did something wrong, and it could also mean they might hire you later. So just keep that in mind too.
Great. One more question? We have time? Sir.
I was just wondering what you guys thought about the recent changes in the industry, especially in regards to the music industry, and how that is going to affect our job prospects. Because I know, for example, that they're not doing so well on the recording management side, and I'm wondering what you guys thought about that.
Sure. Joyce, you're involved in music.
Well, I deal with this every day. I worked at many labels before, not because I was, that's another thing, job hopping. Sometimes you ask a question about that, but sometimes you're not job hopping. It's just your company is done and you have to find another job. So that's another interviewing thing they might ask. But, even though the business is contracting, there's so many opportunities that are expanding in music, and in music technology as well. So you might not get a job at a record label because there's one person for 1 million contracts basically now. But you could still, make it happen, and you use it to your, benefit. And as I was saying before, there's so many people that want to be in music and that are musicians. And I would, start to be friends with, get to know your music community and know what kind of music you like and get out there. But I would just say, even though something contracts, that there's always opportunities, because now there's so much unforeseen things that you're going to have to make new deals and be creative and think out of the box and make things work. So even though that's happening, other things in music are expanding. And if you know how to deal with like the new media stuff and Web 2.0 and what all that means, and blogging, and that is helpful. But never think that even though a business is contracting, that there's no opportunities, because there always are.
Just on that point, scenarios like this, and the music industry is a great example, where there's a huge revolution in the business model, really present opportunities for young people who are not wed to the old model. You've got a lot of music industry executives kind of walking around shell-shocked at this time, like, we don't know what's going to happen next. What is this going to look like exactly? Well, it's a completely different industry, and the revenue streams come from different places. It's much more live performance-based. There's, a lot more, digital distribution is almost everything at this point. You're looking for placement of music in films and in various media. So it's a very different landscape, and it's one that I from my experience, younger people who, we're never wed to the old. I mean, you guys never had LPs, and so on. Never wed to the old model. Can now look at the landscape now and familiar with it and work with that. So I think these kind of scenarios really present an opportunity more than anything.
I totally 100% agree. I think that this is more of an exciting time for music, to be honest with you. I think that it's a really new frontier now, and there's a lot of opportunities out there. They're not the old opportunities like going to big labels. You're going to see a lot of small businesses grow from this, and there will be instances for you to be involved in that, and I think it's pretty exciting. I think it's going to be kind of fun, so definitely take advantage of that. You have to think differently. It's not the same, ideas of A&R and all of these old kind of thought processes that go on anymore. It's really kind of make your own way, and I think it's a good area to be in right now. So.
Vera, new models for sports also?
Well, I think like any industry, a lot more is happening online, especially with live sporting events and those games that are put on the internet later. And so, what's really funny is that I know we've got a basketball person here, sorry, but I think baseball is actually leading the way with putting their games and putting their content online, which is a little ironic because they sort of follow in other regards. But so I think that the sports industry is growing because of that. And I just want to add that I agree with everybody with the music, that it's not necessarily the opportunities in industry is shrinking, it's just changing. And I agree that it's creating more opportunities. So,
right.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we've come to the end of our panel, and thanks for wasting an hour with us. And I'd like to thank especially Joyce, Travis, Vered, and Owen, and all of you for your great questions. Thanks again. Thank you. Great panel. Really good panel.